If you're a NASCAR fan, you need to pay attention. This week has not been a good week for NASCAR, and it's just getting worse and worse. The penalties with Byron and the overturning of that, the suspicions of Kevin Harvick's L2 penalty, but this one is the biggest of them all and revolves around NASCAR's apparently broken business model. If you're a NASCAR fan, you need to pay attention. Okay, so let's talk about this. We do know about the television rights that's coming up in 2025, and race teams with the Race Team Alliance look at this as an opportunity to be able to get more money out of the bag compared to the previous TV deal. The current TV model that we're under in right now, 65% of it goes to tracks, 10% goes to NASCAR, and the rest go to the teams. However, today, numerous race teams came together and talked to media reporters that discussed the process of NASCAR going with this new TV rights deal in 2025 and how the money will be distributed. And let's just say NASCAR and the teams are further apart more than ever on the spectrum of getting a deal done. Curtis Polk of 2311 Racing said, quote, "There is a total misalignment of interests. As a result, the economic model is broken for the teams. The sustainability of the teams in the sport is not very long term unless we have a fundamental change in the model." Now, of course, the reasoning why these teams are upset is the fact that they are now more reliant than ever on sponsorship. If there is one thing we know about NASCAR is that they are very reliant without sponsors. No sponsors, no NASCAR. And especially teams without any sponsors, they don't have a way to keep the doors open. But being so reliant on sponsors makes it very, very stressful for race teams to be able to either keep their doors open or at the very least make a profit. Sponsorship is so important to the NASCAR teams that it generally makes around 60 to 80% of the team's revenue. Just sponsorships, not race wins, none of that. Just sponsorships alone make up more than half of the team's revenue. Now, the rest of that revenue comes from the TV money, but it's still not enough. When you have almost up to 80% of your revenue being reliant on sponsorships, that is huge. That makes TV money look like nothing. And a statistic like that kind of makes sense why a driver like Kyle Busch wasn't able to stay with Joe Gibbs Racing. Once M&M's pulled out, Joe Gibbs really probably couldn't afford Kyle Busch, even though Kyle probably could have taken a pay cut still. If 80%, up to 80% of your team is based off of sponsorship, it is really difficult to stay afloat. So we know what the conflict is. Well, what do the teams want from NASCAR? Pretty simple. The goal is this: for all well-managed teams to be able to compete for a Cup Series championship and make a reasonable profit. That is the goal for all the teams in NASCAR. That's their mission statement. The issue is that no one apparently can make a profit in NASCAR. Even a powerhouse team like Hendrick Motorsports that is at the top of NASCAR, they're losing money. They can't make a profit. For HMS to not be able to make a profit with the amount of success and big time sponsors they have speaks volume as to how broken this business model is. It's at the point where Steve Newmark from Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing just saying that we just at the very least want to break even. We don't even need to have double, triple the amount of profit. We just want to break even. We don't want to keep losing money the longer we're in this business. And what's interesting about this one is that this conversation didn't just come out of the blue out of nowhere. These conversations began early in the year, months prior, a timeline between NASCAR and the race teams to be able to come up with a compromise about what the next media rights should be and how it should be distributed. And at the beginning, it seemed as though that things were going smoothly. The team negotiation committee that works with NASCAR brought in baseline financial information between 7 organizations that represented 16 charter owners and gave them a general idea of what a team had to spend on things like cars, pit crews, tires, travels, and other essentials. NASCAR sat in on meetings, spoke with CFOs from various teams, and took notes without disagreement. And the TNC came up with a 7-point proposal on how they can fix those issues. Now remember, that was months earlier. When the TNC sent that proposal to NASCAR, there was a lot of dead air for months on end. Even throughout the summer, there was complete silence from NASCAR. And it was just until last week, NASCAR responded to the TNC's proposal. The counter offer from NASCAR was highly dissatisfying, the TNC said, showing the gulf between two sides. Jeff Gordon responded saying, quote, "We finally did get a response from them and we're very far apart." So what was the counter offer that NASCAR proposed that the TNC didn't like? Well, it's a phrase that you've heard a lot that NASCAR has been using: cost cutting. Now, while they did counteroffer with a slight increase in revenue, a large portion of it was to basically be able to have teams cut costs to make ends meet. So basically, instead of giving them more money from the TV pile, we're just going to cut your expenses off so you don't have to pay so much. Now, here's the issue. It sounds good on paper. The problem is that if you keep cutting expenses, keep cutting costs, eventually you're going to have to keep cutting jobs and you're going to have to lay off tens or maybe hundreds of people depending on your organization. Race teams have already cut a good amount of jobs with the new introduction of the next gen car. Instead of having fabricators and you building your own car, you buy it from an outside source. So teams have already cut some jobs in that area. The only other way to cut more costs from it is to actually cut the workforce for race teams, which makes no sense if you look at it from that direction, especially when you look at the direction of the sport. If you want a sport to grow, you can't cost cut to make ends meet. That's not how you grow. That's not how you improve your industry for the future. You don't go forward by trying to cut back. That makes no sense. If you look at throughout history with any business, you don't see businesses, industries, whatever, you don't see them improve by cutting costs. So this mindset by cutting costs so that teams can help make ends meet is not a long-term plan that's going to be sustainable for the future. It's just not going to work. It may work right then and there, but it's not going to work down the line because then you're going to have to start laying off people. And basically you're going to have to shorten your company smaller and smaller, smaller to the point where you maybe only have like 10 people that's in your shop. That doesn't sound like improvement. And Curtis Polk mentions that. He says that cutting costs would stifle innovation and therefore impact competition in a negative way, ultimately diluting NASCAR's product instead of strengthening it. Extremely well said. You cannot improve on innovation. You cannot improve on technology. You cannot improve on safety by cutting costs. You get to a solution by investing in your content. We are the content, the teams, the drivers, the cars. That's what people are paying for, to see us. You don't make the sport better by trying to cheapen the content. So here's the thing. Does NASCAR actually have the money to be able to give more to the teams? Oh, you bet they do. The TNC's calculations from a recent report on NASCAR and what the industry makes is mind-boggling. So, with the combination of the France family, NASCAR, and ISC, which is what NASCAR owns, the calculations showed that 93% of the value goes to them. The 7% goes to teams. When I tell you that number, shocking. Like, you get goosebumps from that number. I assume that maybe race teams make around 15 to 20%. I'm not expecting a 60 to 40%, distribution. I'm not expecting that, but maybe 15 to 20%. I feel like, okay, that's understandable. No, 7% goes to teams while NASCAR and them get 93%. How in the world is that fair? No wonder teams are struggling to stay afloat. No wonder Furniture Racing, even though it's a cup champion, closes doors like a year later. No wonder. If all the teams are making is 7% compared to NASCAR's 93%, of course teams are struggling to stay afloat. Of course, even the big teams of Hendrick Motorsports can't even make a profit. Now, keep in mind, this is value, not revenue. This is value, not revenue. But still, that number should not be so low for teams, especially when teams are the reason why NASCAR is even where it is. The fans come to see the teams, the drivers, the cars, like Curtis Polk mentioned. A number should not be that low. The TNC in general just wants a stable business model, a better business model so that teams don't have to be so reliant on sponsorship, or at the very least, they don't have to keep being on their toes in case a sponsor pulls out like M&M's and Joe Gibbs and all of a sudden they're scrambling. Our goal throughout this process is stability, longevity, and the idea of hopefully bringing in a new paradigm to the sport which lifts all the stakeholders. Now, I know that saying this, bringing up this topic between NASCAR and teams and financial and all this stuff, I know it's going to make some fans get PTSD from the CART IRL split that happened back in 1996. I don't think that's going to happen. Personally, I think there's going to be a solution. feel like there will be a compromise between NASCAR and the race teams. I just have a feeling that they will be able to come to a conclusion and be able to have a better future for both sides in this situation. I just can't see a car IRL split happening. We saw how bad that happened to open wheel racing, to American open wheel racing. We saw how that split, how it was extremely detrimental to both sports. And I don't think NASCAR and the race teams, they don't want to go to that place. And I'm pretty sure they will be able to find a way to be able to compromise. And the race teams don't want to go that route as well. We love this sport. This is the #1 motor racing series in America, if not the world. And all we're looking for is a fair deal. Steve Newmark said right now the focus is on trying to make sure we get a deal that continues to grow the sport. That's a singular objective at this point. Now this got so big that NASCAR themselves had to make a statement on this one. They said, quote, "NASCAR acknowledges the challenges currently facing race teams. A key focus moving forward is an extension to the charter agreement, one that will further increase revenue and help lower teams' expenses. Collectively, the goal is a strong, healthy sport, and we will accomplish that together." So yeah, it's very uncharted territory, I guess, to be able to hear about things like this, because usually when it comes to financial situations between NASCAR and teams, you hear that in the background. You hear that in private conversations. Now we're getting this out in the open. It's going to be very interesting with NASCAR, not only just how they deal with everything now. At the beginning of the year, there was so much hype and excitement and anticipation for the future, but we're now going to end the year with so much uncertainty, from the safety of the next gen car to now even bigger, the whole business financial model and the whole disagreement between NASCAR and the race teams heading into 2023 and for the next TV rights deal that will come in 2025. This is going to be one hell of an off season for NASCAR and for the race teams to be able to anticipate and to come to agreement on what's going to happen in the future, not only from a safety car perspective, but also from a financial business perspective. But again, I'm going to reiterate the point that I made earlier. If you want a sport to grow, to be able to innovate, to advance in technology, especially for something like auto racing, to advance in technology, innovation, things like that, you cannot cut corners. You can't cut costs. Again, you cannot move forward by cutting back. That's not how it works. But what are your thoughts on this one? What do you think about this whole entire situation? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, because I'm really interested to hear everyone's thoughts on this situation, because it's such a controversial, big time topic that is going to raise everyone's eyebrows. If you're a NASCAR fan, your eyebrows are going to be raised like this. You're going to be confused, like, what the hell is going on? So I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on this one. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, my name is Jet from MDK. See you next time.